Good evening. My name is Ellen Watsey of the League of Women Voters of Kent County. On behalf of the League, the Central Delaware Alumni Council of the Cantaletta Council and Modern Maturity Center, it is my pleasure to welcome you all to candidates night for the 2023 Dover Municipal Election. This forum is being streamed live on Facebook. Tonight's program will afford us the opportunity to hear a discussion of issues and opinions that will enable us to make more informed choices on Election Day, April 18th. This evening, candidates for Mayor of the City of Dover and City Council seats for the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th districts were invited to participate in the debate. However, before beginning a discussion of the issues, I must reiterate a point made to the candidates and stated in the printed program. The League of Women Voters is required to abide by regulations set forth by the Federal Elections Commission, the Federal Communications Commission, and the Internal Revenue Service. These regulations are intended to ensure nonpartisanship by nonpartisan groups sponsoring appearances of candidates running for public office. Consequently, should only one candidate for a particular office be present, even if that candidate is running unopposed, we cannot provide the opportunity for that candidate to address the audience as part of the formal debate. There must always be at least 2 points of view represented for each office. This evening, 4 candidates running for City Council are impacted by these federal regulations. Councilwoman Tricia K. Arndt, running unopposed for the 3rd District Council seat, and Councilman Roy Sadler Jr., running unopposed for the 4th District Council seat, are directly affected by these federal regulations. Are they here tonight? Okay, I was trying to say that they will be available to participate with meet and greet after the program, but only if they're here. Also affected by these regulations are Paul Fleming, candidate for the 1st District Council seat, and Danielle M. Hall, candidate for the 2nd District Council seat, whose opponents were not able to appear tonight. I know Mr. Fleming is here. Where are you? You stand up.
I am standing.
Is Ms. Hall here? Well, then you will be free to meet with Mr. Fleming after the program and discuss any issue you like. And there should be, if there is campaign literature, it would be available on the table at the rear of the common room. Let us now turn to the format of this evening's debate. The 2 mayoral candidates will have 3 minutes for their introductory statements outlining issues of particular importance to their campaign. Dr. Phyllis Matsu will act as a timekeeper and will notify the candidates when they have 15 seconds left and when their time is up. In fairness to both candidates, we ask that they observe these time limits. The initial speaking order was determined beforehand through the method of random choice by the League of Women Voters Candidates Night Committee. Following these presentations, the candidates will have the opportunity to respond to questions posed by the audience. Each candidate will have 1 minute to answer each question and 1 minute for rebuttal if desired. Each candidate, however, is limited to 1 rebuttal per question. Members of the audience have been given index cards at the entry door on which to write their questions. Volunteers from the League of Women Voters and the Central Delaware Alumni Council of the Cantaletta Council will collect these cards as they are held up in the air. If you require additional index cards, please raise your hand and a monitor will bring them to you. Both candidates will have the chance to respond to each question. We will do our best to address as many of your concerns as possible. Please make the effort to write legibly. If we can't read them, we can ask them. One final word regarding tonight's presentation. It would have been impossible to organize such an event without the conscientious efforts of civic-minded citizens who spent countless hours planning and attending to details. Our thanks go to the League of Women Voters Candidates Night Committee, Beverly Jackson, who contacted the candidates directly and is a co-moderator this evening. Dr. Marianne Cole, the lead technical advisor, who also sent out letters of invitation to all the candidates and produced the candidate name tags. Joan Brookelman, who created the template for the invitation. Fred Brookelman, who formatted and published the printed program. Chris Assay, who is recording this forum on video. Peggy Swigert and Crystal Hamilton, who are staffing the entry table. And Dr. Chandra Owens, President of the League of Women Voters of Kent County, for her ongoing support. We would also like to express our appreciation to volunteers from the League and the Central Delaware Alumni Council and the National Panhandle Council for staffing tonight's forum, and to Mark Belt of Ashley Valley for providing the sound system. Our gratitude also goes to Carolyn Fredericks, Executive Director of Modern Maturity Center, for graciously donating this venue as a public service. And to her administrative assistant, Kathy Becker, and the Modern Maturity Center staff for creating these hospitable surroundings. And now, let me introduce the candidate for mayor of the city of Dover. We will start out, and the candidates will be able to give their 3-minute introductory speech, and we'll start out with Honorable Robert R. Christensen. Robert R. Christensen. Woo!
Good evening. I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters for providing us with this forum and format to discuss something that has always been dear and near to my heart, next to my family and my grandchildren, and that's the city of Dover. We've been provided with a great legacy here, but there's something beyond the legacy that each of us was given. And that's because I have another kindred spirit that makes me close to Dover and the Dover area. And that's because my ancestors lived here before there was a Dover. There are many issues that we need to discuss. There are many problems that not only the city of Dover has, but cities across the nation. And we need to work together, as I have tried to do over my term as mayor, to collaborate with different organizations in the community to come up with solutions and answers. Have we always been successful? No. Does that make me happy? No. But I continue to try to build those collaborations and bridges to make our city a better place, to preserve the legacy of yesterday, to build a legacy for today, and a legacy to pass on to those who will come behind us. Dover is probably one of the greatest places to live, and we should all take advantage of each and every opportunity that we have. But we can't be successful unless our city is safe, and that is job one with me as mayor, and I have tried to do that to make our city a safe place. But there are other issues that depend on whether our city is safe or not. Economic development cannot happen in a community that is not safe and that is not viable. We certainly need to look at rebuilding our downtown, but we need not forget the rest of the community. And that is why I'm running for another term as mayor, to be mayor of the entire city of Dover and to address the needs of Dover today and Dover in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next candidate for mayor of the city of Dover is Diana P. Welch.
Good evening. Good evening. First of all, thank you to the Kent League of Women Voters and Modern Maturity Center, and thank you all for coming out tonight. We appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedules. So I'm just going to tell you why I want to be mayor, and that's what you're here for. You're here because you want to know why I think I'll be the best mayor, and I'm here to tell you. So I'm a retired military. I served in Dover. That's where That's where I was introduced to Dover. It's where I fell in love with Dover. I'm a retired federal agent. I'm an entrepreneur. I was a real estate agent here. I'm a business owner, a wife, and a mother. I traveled the world, and I landed here by accident, and I stayed on purpose. I absolutely fell in love with Dover. I raised a team here. I went to college here. I've lived here for 30 years. I bought my first home here. I fell in love with Dover. So again, why am I running? Because I love Dover. And I intend to be the hardest working mayor that Dover's never had. I've been told don't point out the negatives because people don't like that. But I know that you guys can handle hard conversations and we need to have some. The crime in Dover is 108% above the national average per capita. And it has risen steadily between 8 and 14% over the last decade. And that has to be turned around. As a retired federal agent, I intend on using technology, manpower, force multipliers to do that. And I have not only the problems, and I will not only come to you with the problems, I'm going to come to you with solutions. We're working in a 1990s paradigm. We need to work in a 21st century paradigm. And again, that's why I'm here. I'm not just going to talk about problems, I'm going to talk about solutions. So please ask me any questions you like. And as we accomplish our goals, we can celebrate. But we need to accomplish those goals, and we need to do it incrementally. And every time we solve a problem, yay, we can celebrate. But until we do that, I have every faith that Dover can be turned around. We are a decade behind, and we need to make up for lost time. We are behind in housing, we're behind in crime, we're behind in livability, and we're behind in sustainability in the economy. And those things can change. Some of those solutions will be hard, some of them will be easy, but it's all going to be hard work. And as a community, I know you guys can handle the transparency. We're not doing okay across the board, but we can, and we can do it together. And that's why I want to be your mayor, and that's why you should pick Ben Welsh.
Thank you very much. I know that you are very enthusiastic about.
If we can make a plea for the two candidates to speak a little louder, the people who are on Facebook are having trouble hearing you. That's the best I can do. Thank you.
I can always tell the level of interest in certain issues by how many index cards come up with the same type of questions. So the first two questions have to do with economic development in the city of Dover. And I will read the first two questions, and they will come through combined, and then I'll read the second two questions for the next question. We'll start with Ms. Welch on this one. How will you work to increase job opportunities in Dover, and what will you do to support a vibrant economy in Dover?
That's a manifold question. The first thing, one of the areas that we can do is Charleston Air Force Base used to share airspace or runway with the city. We need to get that civilian air terminal working. We need to get the air cargo terminal out there working. The city has owned the land since 1999. Those are good jobs. Those are avionics jobs. Those are airplane jobs. Those are jobs that really can make that happen. We need to build the infrastructure to make that happen. And that, getting that economy working. We also need housing. And I don't mean, I mean regular housing. We don't have it. We have less than a 4% occupancy rate for rentals. The average rental in Dover is $1,200 a month for a one bedroom. We're losing our college graduates. We have these beautiful colleges here, and they're not staying here. They're taking jobs elsewhere, and they're living elsewhere. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Welch. Mayor Christensen.
Well, thank you. And it's great that you pointed out about the joint use of the Dover Air Force Base. We have been working, myself and the Kent Economic Partnership and the Chamber of Commerce have been working over the last 3 years to get an increased flight use agreement at Dover Air Force Base. We have had inquiries, if that occurs, from major air carriers, DHL, Amazon, FedEx, who are overloaded at their major hubs right now. What do we have in Dover that other places don't have to offer? We have a captive audience of people who already are loading and unloading aircraft at Dover Air Force Base. which we could provide them with jobs so that they would stay here. We also have people that fix and repair airplanes, and that is a necessary function that would happen if this joint use occurs. We certainly have, we were very fortunate in our economic, that's it.
You can finish your sentence if you want.
That we were able, during the pandemic, the middle of a pandemic that affected our nation, and we were able, myself and Mr. Hunt, through our economic development activities, along with Linda Parkowski from the Kent Economic Partnership, to bring a major employer here, Delaware Corrugated Box Company, and 80 to 100 jobs.
Thank you.
And I think we were on the money, economic development-wise.
Thank you, Mayor Christensen. Actually, the next question, which you will be asked to answer first, is almost an identical question, but there is one part of it that's specific. In general, economic development, what would you do differently than what has already been done? And what is your level of support for the Capital City 2030 plan? And if you are in support, what are you most excited about this plan? We'll start out with the mayor on this one.
Well, thank you. We certainly continue to develop partnerships with the local colleges and schools to build a workforce that is going to be able to draw the jobs here that we need. I see that as job number one. Because if you don't have a willing and ethically driven workforce, people will not bring their jobs here. Because they can get that anywhere. We need to have a Class A workforce to provide employers the opportunity to bring jobs to our city, which will bring about development in our downtown area, which is a Dream Big program, which I support. There are some places that have some concerns, but I believe that economic development is a collaboration of partners across the board, the schools, the city, the county, Kent Economic Partnership, the Chamber of Commerce, if we're going to be successful. But moreover, it's providing a workforce that is ready to work when jobs come in.
Thank you, Mayor Christensen. Ms. Welch.
Thank you for the question. How do I support the Mosaic Master Plan? I think the Mosaic Master Plan is excellent, and we have to make sure we do it. It's not the first plan that we've had. We had the Hyatt Palma, we've had the West End, we've had parking studies. We've spent tens and hundreds of thousands of dollars on studies without but a smattering of those recommendations implemented. You can't do that. If you pay $200,000 for a study, you follow the study. These people have done what they've done. Mosaic is very good at what they do. They've done it in multiple cities, and they're very, very, very careful. It is a minority-owned company about not doing gentrification, right? So they have an excellent plan, and I would follow it not to the letter. There's some environmental issues in there that I'm not okay with, but that's okay. And I would say the first thing the mayor needs to do is probably attend the economic development meetings. And in the last year and a half, 12 meetings were either canceled or not scheduled. So you have to have economic council meetings with your partners, with your people, with the rest of city council.
Well, please finish your sentence.
You have to have meetings to, we have all these committees, and you have to have meetings to hear what's going on and then act on these things. If you're not having the economic development meetings, then you can't do that.
Thank you, Ms. Welch. Our next two groups of questions deal with the Dover Police Department. And we'll start out with Ms. Welch on this one. How do you plan to address the budget to get the Dover Police Department officers needed in the city to provide safety to its residents? And the second part of that question is, what would you do differently than what is already being done about the police department? Welch.
Okay. First thing is budget for officers. We do need some more officers, but officers, and they've proven study after study, throwing officers at it is not always the problem. We live in the 21st century. Again, I'm going to point that out in case anybody forgot. There's a company called Vector Solutions. There's companies who do license plate recognition, who do cameras, who do monitor cameras 24/7, who address high crime areas, who help the police solve crimes much more rapidly, and they're what's called force multipliers. So one camera can do in 24 hours the work of possibly 2 or 3 officers. The other thing I would do is recommend, and I have not talked to the chief, and we have not had this meeting, but one of the things I would like to know is they've done study after study, beat officers, bringing them back. They went away from them, and I'm saying as a federal agent, I taught at the Federal Law Enforcement Academy. There's lots of things we can do to increase that. And I'm sorry, I lost the second half of that question.
The second half of the question. That's a good question.
I get so excited about force multipliers.
So at this point, I forgot which is the first half and which is the second half, but I'll read them both to you, and you can pick whichever one you want. What would you do differently than what is already being done as far as the police department is concerned? And how do you plan to address the budget to get the Dover Police Department officers needed in the city to provide safety to its residents?
But the budget we kind of talked about, the only budget that's up on the online right now is the 22 draft, so I haven't gotten into the 2023 budget. But what I would do is sit down with the chief, and I've been a lot of places and I've seen how it's done in other places, and one of the things is possibly 10-hour shifts instead of 12.
We can finish sentences here.
I'm sorry.
The next question. We'll first go to Mayor Rick Christensen to answer those 2 questions.
Well, first off, I take a little bit of umbrage at your criticism of the Dover Police Department. I don't know if anybody knows it in this room or not, but 70% of the properties in the city of Dover are taxable. The taxes that we collect do not even cover the Dover Police Department's budget. Also, in these days and times, we are 7 police officers down, 6 cadets down, because the national media has belittled and belayed the office of being a police officer. You can't do your job with cameras and fancy gimmicks. Policing is community policing. Officers on the street, feet on the street. But your resources are limited as to how many police officers you have. You can have 10,000 cameras, but if nobody's watching those cameras, you're going to be reactive instead of proactive. And you need a proactive police department.
Thank you, Mayor Christensen. The next 2 questions. Please, go ahead.
I like to use my rebuttal. First of all, I did not criticize Dover PD. For those of you who don't know, my husband is a retired Dover PD officer. We don't do that in my house. Secondly, cameras are not a gimmick. They're proven over and over and over again, and they're force multipliers. And you don't remove a police officer from the street, you add to that. And you add to it 24/7. It doesn't get tired. It doesn't care if it's raining. It didn't have a fight with someone 15 minutes ago and, not paying attention. It's 24/7. As our license plate, number sequencers and all kinds of things. There's many, many things that can be done that can enhance Dover PD and training as well.
Thank you, Ms. Welch. Rebuttal, Mayor Christensen.
I apologize to Ms. Welch if I misread what she said, but I take great offense at any inkling of dissatisfaction or displeasure or the opportunity to do a better job than the men and women of the Dover Police Department. And also, we have a world-class police chief, who knows his job probably better than anyone in this room, myself included. He is working on a 21st century police department based on community policing, using the current resources that we have now. He is so dynamic, and the men and women of the Dover Police Department are so dynamic that we have begun our 4th municipal police class, training our officers and other officers from communities throughout the state who have entrusted us with their officers to be municipal police officers in a 21st century community-oriented police department. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Christensen. Our next question also deals deals with the police and the criminal justice system. And we'll start out with Mayor Christensen on this one. What measures would you support to increase community confidence in law enforcement personnel? And the second part of that question, do you feel that systemic racism exists in the city's criminal justice system? And if so, what policies would you pursue to end it? Mayor Christensen.
Well, certainly we do not condone racial profiling or anything like that in the Dover Police Department, because we are a community that relies on all of our community members to develop a trust and a working relationship with all of our officers. Can you read the first part of the question again? Because when you do a two-parter, I'm a little bit discombobulated.
What measures would you support to increase community confidence in law enforcement personnel?
Well, certainly our community policing activities and interacting. We appointed a police advisory board made up of our citizens who advised Chief Johnson and his staff on things that the community sees that we do right and on things that we do wrong. And they are there on a monthly basis. They provide us with insight that we probably sometimes don't get off the street, but we've developed a new partnership that was not there before, of community trust between the police officers on the street and those who need the services of those police officers.
Thank you, Mayor Christensen. Ms. Welch.
Systemic racism exists, yes, everywhere, all the time, no matter what. As does, systemic sexism and gender bias. I mean, it exists, and the best we can do is be better and not do it. And we're learning all the time. So to answer your first question, yes, it exists. And to pretend it doesn't means we're not keeping the conversation real. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm always going to be real. I'm never going to say, oh, we don't have a problem. It's always, we can always do better. Right now, Dover sits, and you can pull out your cell phones and check this. If you look up Dover crime, we're 140% the national average for violent crime in the city limits of Dover. And that's in the city limits of Dover as reported by Dover PD to the FBI for crime statistics. So yes, we can do better. Lastly, remember I said you guys want transparency? I don't shy away from that. And transparency is all officers can use better training. And because of my connections with the federal law enforcement, I can still get them in some free seats to get some good training.
Thank you, Ms. Welch. The next question, rebuttal, Mayor Christensen.
If I can, I'd just like to point out that the crime statistics that are reported do not just include the city of Dover. They include zip codes that go as far as south as Woodside, Rodney Village, and other places that aren't in the city of Dover. So those figures are skewed. We certainly take responsibility for all the crime statistics that are within our jurisdiction. But to say that other jurisdictions, that we're responsible for those just because of the zip codes is not accurate.
Thank you, Mayor Christensen.
Rebuttal.
Rebuttal, Ms. Welch.
That is not true. Every agency reports to the FBI for their agency. So whatever Dover is reporting is happening in the city limits of Dover. And if you're unsure about that, there's several websites that you can go to that will confirm that. It is not by zip code.
Thank you, Ms. Welch. We only have one rebuttal per question. Our next question has to do with housing. We'll start out with Ms. Welch on this one. Affordable housing is out of reach for many families. Rising rents and increasing mortgage rates often impact those with the lowest incomes. Do you agree that affordable housing is a serious problem in Dover, and if so, how should the city deal with it? And the second part of that question is, would you be open to expanding multifamily zoning in downtown Dover? Ms. Welch.
So yes, there is a terrible housing problem in Dover, and this is nationwide, but it is particularly difficult in Dover. We have less than a 4% availability rate for apartments. The average one-bedroom apartment costs $1,200. If you make $15 an hour, which in Dover is like an entry-level working position, you're spending over half your income or better to keep a roof over your head, and that's not acceptable. So we need to enter private-public partnerships. We have several areas of land that are available that we can enter private-public partnerships with. The Mosaic Plan is very detailed on how we should approach some of this. Again, I'm going to go back to the Mosaic Plan. It's an excellent plan. It avoids gentrification. I do believe that we can rezone. I also believe that we need to build a little higher, because higher is cheaper and easier. And you can't get an investor to build an apartment building unless they get return on their investment. So that's one of the first things I would look at, is changing some of the zoning, yes.
Thank you, Ms. Welch. Mayor Christensen.
Well, we certainly all acknowledge the fact that there is a shortage of affordable housing, not only in Dover, but across the country. And it's not only up to the responsibility of the city of Dover, but it's the responsibility of the state of Delaware. And during my time as mayor, I have met with the State Housing Authority to try to accomplish the goal of providing more affordable housing in our city. But one of the successes and collaborations that I have done as mayor has worked with NCAW and Habitat for Humanity, who provide owner-occupied homes at affordable rents and mortgages. So we need to continue that collaboration, but certainly we need to look into collaborating with the state, the federal government, and private investors to create more housing, affordable market housing, affordable housing for those less fortunate across the board.
Thank you, Mayor Christensen. Our next question is related to the question on police and has to do with the communication between the city government and the population of the city of Dover. What steps would you take to increase constructive conversation, dialogue, and planning across racial, ethnic, cultural, economic, and political divides? And the other question related to it is almost identical. What steps could the city take to encourage the acceptance and embrace of a more culturally and racially diverse society? Mayor Christensen.
Well, certainly, this is 2023. And I believe that everyone in this room believes that we need to embrace one another, because we're all here for a short period of time. But I have fostered, and along with members of council and other members of the community, once again in collaboration, of developing dialogue across the board with all of our citizens, because it's important that we understand one another. We need to know where we've been, the experiences that we're having today, and what we're going to experience in the future. Life is too short to be at one another's throats. Get in a heartbeat. But it is important that the dialogues that we have begun continue, not only today, but continue in the future. Because it is important that we work together to build a better and bigger and greater city.
Thank you, Mayor Christensen. Ms. Welch.
I'm going to need you to repeat that question, because it was very long, and I just want to make sure I'm answering the right question.
What steps could the city take to encourage the acceptance and embrace of a more culturally and racially diverse society? And the second part to that question, which I mentioned, was almost identical. What steps would you take to increase constructive conversation, dialogue, and planning across racial, ethnic, cultural, economic, and political divides?
Oh, that's a very multifaceted question. So as far as, how we've been reaching out, I can only speak for what I would do. And one of the first things I would do is I would increase recruitment and try, for Dover Police Department, we need more women, we need more people of color, we need leadership that's of color. And that's one of the things. The other thing is, in terms of community policing and connecting with the public and crossing that bridge is, again, beat cops over and over and over keep coming back. It's an old 1950s idea that was abandoned with the new policing of the 1970s. If you know your history, all of us started watching the beat cop go away. They're very important, and they realized that they result in almost a 12% decrease in crime in the areas they walk a beat. And I think I answered both of your questions. Is the communication, because that's your beat cop right there, and community policing. Yeah.
Constructive conversation, dialogue, and planning across racial, ethnic, cultural lines.
Well, again, you would need a committee, and you need a one that actually meets, regularly. Not only the Economic Development Committee, but we should probably have a committee on diversity and invite churches and the police department and real estate agents and everybody who touches all of our lives.
Rebuttal, Mayor Christensen.
Well, we already have a committee in place, thanks to our council president, who has touted as his moniker for city government and its interactions not only with its employees but with its citizens on diversity and inclusion. So if anyone was aware of that, they would know that that committee meets monthly, if not more. We have a very diverse number of appointees to council committees, women, minorities. So we've been addressing that issue as mayor and council.
Thank you, Mayor. Ms. Welch, rebuttal.
Yeah, the first thing I would advise is that we have a Facebook page that's functional, social media that's functional, and that we have a web page that you can use that's more user-friendly. Unfortunately, most of our city councilmen don't even use Facebook, or when they do, they post pictures of dogs and stuff. I voted you in. I want to know what you're doing. I want you to post every day on what's going on in that city. And that's also another way that we'll bridge that communication gap.
Thank you, Ms. Welch. The next question is actually referring back to a recent issue that you just dealt with, and that's affordable housing. So the question is, in regards to affordable housing, is there any intent to address land lease agreements and their disproportionate effect on low-income families? Ms. Welch.
Well, again, I'm going to go back to Mosaic. They have a plan, a very good blueprint. If we follow it, it avoids gentrification. Yes, you can raise your tax base without affecting the people who are already there. It's an excellent, excellent plan, and it should be followed. And again, it can't be shelved. We cannot have one more study that's being shelved. So that is my goal, is to follow that plan and to get experts in here on how to do land lease, how to do bonds, how to do I'm sorry, and we're just flew out of my head. TIFs, and there's all multitude of ways to get in private and public funds. There's a multitude of ways to get funding for that. And again, we need to build up. A 3-story apartment building, that's just not enough return on investment, and it doesn't provide enough housing. We need a 10-story apartment building.
Thank you, Ms. Welch. Mayor Christensen.
Can you repeat the question?
Sure. In regards to affordable housing, is there any intent to address land lease agreements and their disproportionate effect on low-income families?
Well, land lease agreements are one of the favorite pet peeves of our father of council, Councilman Neal. Back when the development was coming along, where land leases were coming into effect and into fashion, I had great concerns about the folks that would put their homes, their permanent homes, on land that they had no control over what the actual cost was. And it came to fruition. And so Mr. Neal and myself have been to Legislative Hall to lobby to get those rules and regulations for land lease opportunities changed up. Have we been successful? No, but we continue to make that effort, because there's nothing worse than having a home on a land that you don't own. Because remember, the last line in the movie Gone with the Wind, it's the land, Scarlett, it's the land.
Did you want to rebut, Ms. Welch?
When land lease is spoken of, it's not typically spoken of in terms of individual home. In this scenario, it would be that which you provide to a builder, and you say, look, we're going to land lease this for you, so you don't have to buy this giant square of land. Over time, they pay for it eventually. There's all kinds of agreements that can be made, and they build a 10-story apartment building that have 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, 3 bedrooms. You're not necessarily, and I'm not saying that land lease is where I would go, but there is no one answer to this, whether it's land lease, whether it's bonds, whether it's TIFs, whether it's private public funds. If we don't build housing now, because we're already 10 years behind, we will be 20 years behind in 2 years.
Thank you, Ms. Welch. The next group of questions, I was trying to sort them out here, have to do with homelessness in the city of Dover. We sorted out a little bit. The first one is quite simple. What is your plan to address homeless? Is there a plan to clean up the problem of loitering? Is there a plan to address the homeless population? How do you plan to deal with the homeless situation on Lockerman and even the Green? Also panhandlers that approach visitors and residents alike. So you have 3 questions that really deal with the same issue. And we'll start out with Mayor Christensen.
You know, there's nothing more heart-wrenching than to see someone who is unsheltered in the cold, in the heat, no matter what time of year it is. And I certainly would be heartless, as would everybody in this room, if we didn't take this issue to heart. But it's not particularly an issue that's peculiar to Dover. It's an issue that's across our country. We have allowed our fellow citizens to be untaken care of. As a matter of fact, for the issue of panhandling and people being homeless and on the street in downtown Dover, it is an issue that we have tried to address and will continue to address. But the success of taking care of those who are less fortunate than we are is to address the issues of addiction, abuse, and alcoholism. And it's our responsibility, and it continues to be our responsibility.
Thank you, Mayor Christensen. Ms. Welch.
Okay, homelessness, there's essentially 3 kinds of homelessness. There's addiction and mental health homelessness. There is economic homelessness. I just can't find a job, and we're all 2 paychecks away from being homeless. And there's a third type that they're not actually homeless, but they're still surfing on mom's couch or living in mom's basement because they can't afford an apartment. The first type, if I could solve, I would win the Nobel Prize. So, that's been something that has plagued humanity since the time of the Romans. Economic, I have some solutions for. And one, more housing, better jobs, a better job market. Right now in Dover, the poverty rate is double the national average in the city limits of Dover. And the third type, again, is getting more housing inventory. Get, the kid out of mom's basement so he can get his own apartment. Homelessness is really tough. Panhandling, constitutionally, it's very, very hard to deal with. It's impossible, constitutionally.
Thank you, Ms. Welch. Rebuttal, Mayor Christensen.
Well, Ms. Welch, if you could solve the problem of homelessness in a heartbeat, I would give you the Nobel Prize.
Thank you, Mayor Christensen. The next question is related to issues in downtown Dover, and it has to do with the vacancy of buildings. There are 3 questions, and they're all related. Do you believe the vacancy rate in larger buildings within the city limits poses a challenge to the neighborhoods that surround them? What will you do to monitor and report the rate? What will you do to control absentee landlords? And the next question, next index card, is related to that. How would you revitalize downtown Dover, all the empty storefronts for decades? How do you bring in anchor stores and address perceived crime? And the final question, also related but more specific, what are the plans for the old Dover Library and Post Office and other empty buildings in Dover? We'll start out with Ms. Welch.
The vacancy rate in downtown Dover is extremely high. I think it's somewhere around 15 or 50%. As far as tracking that belongs to the Downtown Dover Partnership. They're supposed to be tracking that. They're supposed to be recruiting. They're supposed to be, getting new businesses in there. And I know this sounds crazy, but everyone complains about parking. Yet on St. Patty's Day and 4th of July and when we have the Hops and Heritage, everybody finds parking. So I want a situation where I have to worry about parking every day. And to do that, we have to fill those units. Some of them are vacant because they have bad landlords. Some of them are vacant because maybe they're charging too much. Some of them are vacant because getting a tenant in there because they've heard there's a lot of crime down there is very hard. And we have to change that perception, and we have to change it rapidly. And what you need down there more, and having been a business owner down there for 22 years, right on Lockerman Street, boutique style shops. You're not gonna, if you can buy it at Walmart, they don't want to do that. And we need them to be open Friday, Saturday, Sunday, 7 days a week.
Thank you, Ms. Welch. Mayor Christensen.
Well, the city has put yeoman effort into emptying those, to doing away with the vacancies that are on Lockerman Street. We have vacant building fees that are charged for buildings that remain vacant. But it's convenient to some of the landlords in downtown Dover just to pay those vacancy fines. The Downtown Dover Partnership, it is true, has been charged with filling those vacancies. They've not been quite as successful as I would like to see them be, but they continue to make those efforts. You cannot, due to the property rights that our citizens have, you cannot force someone to do something with their property other than maintain it to the standards that we have. I don't agree with that necessarily. I think we need a bigger hammer, but we don't have a bigger hammer at this point in time. At this point in time, there is a study that's underway to see what the vacant post office can be done, what we can do to repurpose that property, and also the library, that the vacant library that we have downtown is a property of Delaware State University, and it's up to them, which they are currently revitalizing that building, to determine the use of that building. I apologize.
Thank you, Mayor Christensen. The next, rebuttal, Ms. Welch.
Yeah, the DDP has been tasked with doing that, and unfortunately has been tasked with doing several other things, so they tend to lose focus. We need a person who just does that, and I had an opportunity to speak to the Kent County Association of Realtors this last week, and we need real estate agents should do what real estate agents do. And the Downtown Dover Partnership should not be acting as real estate agents. We need to get the real estate agents involved and basically build a partnership with them. And we have to deal with the crime first, and we have to deal with perception of crime, or you're not going to get anybody down there. That's the #1 issue right now. The mayor is in charge of economic development, so as the mayor, I would make sure that happened, and I know how to do it. I have the blueprint. I've done it 6 times.
Thank you, Ms. Welch. The next several questions deal various aspects of the issue of climate change. First part of it, do you believe that climate change is a threat to our health, air, water, food, and shelter? If so, what measures or regulations would you support to lessen the impact of climate change? And the second part of that question is, what is your stance on renewable energy for the city of Dover? Mayor Christensen.
Well, certainly anybody who's been in Dover for the last week that doesn't realize that there's climate change, well, you must have been inside your house and not come outside. The city of Dover has conscientiously, as a major utility provider for our city, which is one of our enterprise funds, has been looking into reducing our carbon footprint. We certainly are supporting renewable energy. We have dismantled, or in the process of dismantling, our old 1960s power plant, and we've purchased clean energy for our citizens for the future. We also have invested in solar energy and look toward doing that in the future, not only by city mandate, by state mandate in the future. We have a solar farm at Garrison Oak Technology Park, and we're looking for a return on our investment. So we are aware of climate change and what our responsibility is.
Thank you, Mayor Christensen. Ms. Welch.
During my opening statement, I said some of these things are going to be easy and some of them are going to be hard. There are a couple easy, like almost immediate fixes that we can do. And obviously it would require coordination with DENREC and some other agencies. But that big giant median we had going down 13, trees can be along there. Smyrna's done it, a couple other cities done it. They reduced the asphalt temperature by 10 degrees, 15 degrees. Sounds like a small thing, but all those leaves absorb all that carbon that comes out of those cars. It's very, very helpful. Very easy, feels like a small fix, but it's huge, especially over time. We have beautiful trees down in Lockerman. We need to add more trees anywhere we can. We need to put solar panels on all city buildings and encourage all state buildings to do the same. There is a 25% rebate for solar panels that go on anyone's home. We should have an office to help them with that paperwork and get Delaware to be a solar city. Now I know it rains a lot here and you're not always going to be able to use solar, but it is supplemental.
Thank you, Ms. Welch. I have several questions. A rebuttal of Mayor Christensen.
I'd just like to point out that this is year number 30 for the city of Dover being a tree city, because we love our trees. We plant them where we can. The trees out on Route 13, everybody remembers them. Well, I remember them because I was born in the 1900s. But there were trees on Route 13. Why were they taken out? Because I, as a firefighter, had the unfortunate opportunity to go out there and untangle people from around those trees. And the state highway department chose to take those trees out.
Thank you, Mayor Christensen. Ms. Welch.
They don't have to be giant trees. These can be crepe myrtles, they can be large bushes, but we need some greenery out there and it will reduce that temperature. I mean, these are small fixes. There's also painting roofs white. You know, these asphalt black roofs, they absorb an incredible amount and they reduce the amount of albedo. I can explain that, but you can look it up. They reduce the amount of albedo. And, you know, when your roof is white, that's why they paint them all white and grease, because your house heats up and then you got to cool that all night long. It takes forever to cool down. There's a ton of things we can do and programs that we can initiate to really become better at being stewards of the environment, including adding green spaces.
Thank you, Ms. Welch. The next several questions all deal with different aspects of the very topics that you have been discussing. What type of opportunities and challenges do you see the city facing in response to the federal state mandates geared to reduce regional greenhouse gas? In other words, charging, I can't read all of this, increase in solar and wind power. Is that clear?
No.
Do you want me to read it again? Okay, we'll start out with Ms. Welch. Did you want to answer that question or not? So you feel you've answered it already? Okay. Here is an interesting sidebar, actually, to this question. With Delaware facing more intense and frequent heat waves, do you believe the city should ensure that at-risk citizens, especially in disadvantaged communities, have access to local, safe cooling centers? Mayor Christensen.
Well, once again, certainly the city's not heartless, and I think that city staff would bear me out on this, that we provided free air conditioners to folks in need. We have had cooling centers, and we certainly need to continue to be aware of the situations that affect those who are less fortunate than we are. It's got to be a partnership and a collaboration, because it can't fall all in the city's lap. So we need to go back to the old way that we used to take care of those who were less fortunate in our community. And we come together as a community to take care of those who are less fortunate than we are. But we certainly have made efforts in the office of the mayor and by members of council to look out for those who are less fortunate than we are during all types of weather.
Thank you, Mayor Christensen. Ms. Welch.
I'm unaware of a specific place for cooling. I mean, I think the public library, I agree, it is a big problem. You have 95-degree heat and 95% humidity. It's brutal out there. And I know because I've been working in a commercial kitchen for 7 years, so it's brutal out there. And it's something that we need to address. We need to make sure that those places are open. We need to coordinate with the folks who run shelters, who run safe havens, and make sure that on the most brutal of days that they have somewhere to go. I know we do it for the coldest nights, but the warmest days, we need to start looking at that. I mean, because someone's homeless or not, they're still a resident of Dover, essentially. They're still here, and they're humans, and we have to address that.
Thank you, Ms. Welch. The next question actually has to do with, in a sense, with climate change, but it also has to do with how we react to it, what forms of transportation we use. Why is it so important to encourage and facilitate bicycling and walking in Dover? Ms. Welch.
I hate to do this. I'm going to go back to Mosaic study. So there's livability islands planned, and livability islands mean you live, you work, you shop, you are all kind of like downtown is now. If anybody who's ever lived downtown, and I have, my son has, you get up, you go to work, you shop, you eat, you do everything downtown, and you don't move your car for 30 days, until you have to start it to charge the battery. And we have those livability island potentials elsewhere. I mean, Blue Hen Mall is still on my radar. Turning the library into small, efficiency apartments. It's not very big, but we can see what we can do. We might be able to make it higher. There's the air park. You would need apartments down there. They work there. They live there. They shop there. And that's one of the ways to reduce greenhouse gases immensely. Not to mention adding solar power, which we've already talked about. Did I answer that whole question? That was a long question.
Yes, you did. Mayor Christensen.
Thank you. It's very important for us to develop all types of transportation because each of us are different. Chris likes to bicycle. He was chairman of my bicycle committee for the Dover-Kent County MPO. So it's important to have multimodal means of transportation for all of our citizens. A bicycle may not appeal to someone. An electric bike might appeal to someone. Walking might appeal to someone. Mass transit may appeal to someone. An Uber may appeal to someone. So I think it's important that we as a city, we as a state, consider multimodal means of transportation for all of our citizens. Not just to think about it and not just to paint a nice bicycle lane, but to encourage people to use all modes of transportation in our city, in our state.
Thank you, Mayor Christensen. Ms. Welch, rebuttal.
Yeah, we had built a multimodal transportation center downtown. It was started and it was never really lived up to what it needed to be lived up to, and that is another one of my goals. We need to get the Greyhound bus there. We need to go to, right now the Greyhound bus stop is like at a gas station somewhere on 13. It's not okay. You can't go in during the rain. You can't, we're not encouraging Greyhound bus use right now. We're not encouraging, and we need to work with MPO and some other state agencies. Instead of these big giant buses that we have, little minivans. Sometimes you see 6 people riding on that bus, and we need to encourage more minivans, more routes, less use of gas. So I just would say that multimodal has been on the books for quite a while and was never completed. My goal is to complete it.
Thank you, Ms. Welch. Mayor Christensen.
If I could point out, we tried to have the Greyhound bus as part of the bus station and bus facility on South Queen Street. They chose not to go there because DelDOT chose for them not to go there. They did not want them there at that particular time. So myself and my staff at City Hall worked in conjunction with another vendor to find a place where the Greyhound bus could pull into to service its customers that needed to go on long-haul transportations. Was it the ideal spot? No. Did the people step forward? Were we able to work with them in collaboration to have a bus stop? Yes, and I want to thank heaven for 7-Eleven.
Thank you, Mayor Christensen. In relationship to the previous question that we had on bicycling and walking, here is another part of a question that deals with the obstacles to walking. How would you approach pedestrian safety improvements along major thoroughfares? Start out with Mayor Christensen.
Well, certainly having been on the Shoe Leather Express for quite a bit of my life, I believe that we should encourage people to walk. It's healthy. It's a healthy thing to do. But we also need to school people, motorists, bicyclists, and other people that we're going to share the roads and sidewalks with on pedestrian safety. We have had so many pedestrian fatalities in the state of Delaware, and the state has finally decided that this month we're going to really look at pedestrian safety as it should be addressed. So I think it's very important that we encourage people to walk, but we also need to encourage them to walk safely with the other traffic that they have to deal with.
Thank you, Mayor Christensen. Ms. Welch.
As far as safety goes, some cities have used just at intersections. There are these, they're not the bright crime lights. Remember, you see those in bright crime areas. They're not like that. They're just cleaner, crisper bulb. It's like a LED. And they put them into crosswalks, and they put them like a couple down, a couple up. It'd be very expensive. Obviously, it would need federal and state funding. The intersections are where you see the biggest problem. People trying to cross in those intersections. It's dark. It's raining. You're going down, 13 at 45 miles an hour, and someone thinks they can make it across and they can't. And so if we could make those intersections a little brighter, I think that's the first step. The sidewalks aren't too bad, actually, along 13. The biggest problem is we need livability islands. And if you live and work and shop and you're walking everywhere, that's going to encourage walking. And as long as we have good lighting and we can reduce the crime level, people don't want to walk if there's a lot of crime. So,
thank you, Ms. Welch. The next question has to do with our public sewer and water systems. Please comment on the condition of our public sewer and water systems. Is there a plan in place to modernize? Ms. Welch.
There is a plan in place to modernize the water. I know there's also a plan in place to modernize the electric. I don't think it incorporates enough solar. I don't think it incorporates enough alternate energy sources. You can never rely on alternate energy sources completely. The technology is not quite there yet. The minute you can get an F-16 to fly under solar power, I'm on board. But we still need carbon gas use some places. As far as the water and sewer, we face the same problem every city that's 230 some odd years old is facing. We have an aging infrastructure, and we have got to start putting money into it now. We've got to start removing those old pipes and planting new ones, and we also have to plan for expansion of, again, the impact fees and everything on these 10-story buildings that I'm talking about. We've got to do something better with that infrastructure. And I know the water in Dover has been safe for many, many years. I've actually done that research, so.
Thank you, Ms. Welch. Mayor Christensen.
The water in the city of Dover for years and years and years was pristine because it comes from deep well aquifers at Cheswell and the Piney Point. But then in its infinite wisdom, we borrowed money from the federal government to improve our water system with a new water plant along Long Point Road. When we took those funds, we had to chlorinate our water. Before that, it came out of the wellheads, came through ultraviolet filters, and was pristine at your faucet. Then, in the infinite wisdom of the state of Delaware, once we chlorinated our water, the bright idea was come up to put fluoride in it. And everybody here has had brown water because of the combination of chlorine and fluoride scaling our pipes. There is a plan in place, if you don't believe me so, to replace the 200 miles of pipe of water and sewer pipes that we have. If you don't believe there is a plan in place and it is in action, try going from Division Street to Silver Lake on State Street. We have a plan and it is in place.
Thank you, Mayor Christensen. The next two questions actually can be answered in probably one question. It has to do with the fire service and medical services. It's very simple. What are your plans for the fire service, and will you expand medical services? Mayor Christensen.
For 140 years, the men and women of the Robbins Hose Company and Dover's all-volunteer fire department have provided Class A fire protection for the city of Dover and will continue to do so into the future until they notify us that they cannot do it anymore. I speak kind of parochially because I have almost 50 years in Robbins Hose Company, and I'm very proud of the fact that they are the only all-volunteer fire department protecting a state capital in the nation. As long as we support them with equipment and training and the equipment that they need, they'll provide us with the Class A fire service, that fire protection service that we need. We have St. Francis Ambulance Service, which we contracted with, which provides exemplary first aid service via 4 ambulances and additional ambulances and equipment that need to be called on board. So we have top of the line fire protection and EMS service in the city.
Thank you, Mayor Christensen. Ms. Welch.
Yes, I think we have very good fire service, and when I first got here, I thought it was the coolest thing in the whole world that we had all volunteer fire department. I thought that was the neatest thing I'd ever heard in my life. However, that said, a lot of the firemen are aging out. They're struggling getting new recruits. Nobody wants to volunteer anymore, or the ones that do, they're fewer and far between. And so I don't want to wait until they tell me it's a crisis. I think we need to start looking at the fires that we have to respond to, the emergency calls we have to deal with, and see if the number of people we have and we can carry that into not next year, not the year after, 2040, 2050. We have to start building that department now because again, or we'll be 10 years behind again. So we may need to hire and look at how many firemen we're going to need moving into the 22nd century.
Thank you, Ms. Welch. Mayor Christensen, rebuttal.
Kind of disagree with you there. I think that the leadership of the fire department, combined with the leadership of the mayor and council, certainly will assess when we need to change our operation, whether it's for the fire service or for the emergency medical services we have. I think the department has been responsible for 140 years. You still have bona fide leadership. They'll know when the time is to come to tell the city, and they're not going to wait till it's the last minute.
Thank you, Mayor Christensen. Ms. Welch.
I just don't want to take that chance. I would rather do an audit, figure out where we are, figure out how many things we respond to, how many firemen they have, and how many are going to start aging out in the next 5 years, and start planning on recruiting them now. Because if you don't recruit leadership now, and it's the same thing in the police department, it's the same thing with federal agents, it's the same thing with the military. If you don't start planning for the guys who are retiring in 5 years or 6 years or 7 years, if you don't start planning for that now, when they're, you're playing catch up. And you never want to have to catch up with emergency services, ever.
Thank you, Ms. Welch. Here's a question we haven't had before, but it has to do with housing. How would you draw the University students into downtown housing if said housing existed? Would you lift the non-related person cap on residential units to enable students to more easily share homes? Ms. Welch.
Well, I'm just going to repeat that. If said housing existed, I'm just going to kind of leave that there for a second. We are 10 years behind the power curve. If we do not build 5-story, 6-story, 10-story apartment buildings, they don't have to be downtown. There's a lot of areas all over Dover we can look at. We will not keep those college graduates. And if we don't have jobs for them, we will not keep those college graduates. We don't have enough housing for the kids that are going to college and you know, servers and car mechanics, and they're all living in Middletown, and we're losing out on that tax base completely. We need to keep our college graduates here, encourage people to live down here, have really cool loft apartments that can be for rent, and we're not going to get that unless we start building it. And we need to start on that yesterday. So if said apartments are available, we could do that. That's not a problem, but they're just not.
Thank you, Ms. Welch. Mayor Christensen.
We certainly want to encourage the students at Delaware State University to locate downtown, not only in their dorms, but affordable apartments and housing. We also need to look at the needs of the graduate students from Delaware State University, the residence program that has started at Bay Health, and certainly look at the housing needs. But we need to remember that this isn't only the city's responsibility to look into providing affordable housing. This is the responsibility of a collaboration of the city and private investors. We have to remember that the success of these buildings, these apartment buildings that we're going to build, depends on if there is an external investor who is looking for a return on their investment to provide us with this housing that we keep saying that we need downtown. It's not the sole responsibility of the city, but it is the responsibility of the city to accommodate the needs of housing at any given time that we can through ordinances or zoning changes.
Thank you, Mayor Christensen. The next question also has to do with housing, just a different aspect of the issue. In regards to housing, how will you plan for these new homes to, I guess, avoid falling into the trap of redlining or keep these homes from becoming projects for low-income people of color? Mayor Christensen.
Well, certainly, I think I already told everyone that this is 2023, and the redlining should be done away with totally. You know, affordable housing and housing should be available to all of our citizens. Everyone who works hard, everyone who's in need of a home. You know, it's our responsibility, it's the state's responsibility to make sure that these instances of redlining don't occur. It's up to our banking community to realize that they have a responsibility to all of our citizens to help everyone to afford affordable housing.
Ms. Welch.
Well, the mayor is in charge of economic development, and part of that is housing. We have to make sure, you know, it was said that the city is not solely responsible, but the city is responsible for making it easy for that to happen, and I'm not talking about redlining. We're responsible for making it very a one-stop shop when you go into the city inspections office, and when you go and you get your permits, and you know what you need to get and how much it's going to cost and how much impact fees are. Right now, as a person who's rehabbed and provided housing, that system is a nightmare, and we need to fix it, and we need to make it pleasant for an investor to come down here. The more obstacles, I mean, I can't tell you how many investors have come down here and looked at spaces, and once they realize some of the problems, they choose to move elsewhere where it's a little easier. We need to roll out the red carpet. We need to make sure that housing is available at multiple price points for multiple people, and that starts at the lowest income to affordable to mid-income to even luxury apartments. If you're a doctor at Bay Health, you want a really, really nice apartment, and right now there aren't any in Dover, so we have to keep them here.
Thank you, Ms. Welch. The next two questions really cover territory you've already covered, but because there's such interest in this issue, I'm going to read both of them to you, and you can make any points that you felt weren't made strong enough before. Sussex County is experiencing a population and housing boom, attracting new residents from Philadelphia, New York, and other large metro areas. To what do you attribute this growth, and what lessons can we learn from the Sussex experience that can be applied to Dover? And related to that, what steps will you take to encourage a vibrant economy in our city? Ms. Welch.
Well, it's funny you should say that. So online, Newcastle, so Smyrna, Middletown, Wilmington, Newcastle, Newark have added hotels, fast food, waterfront development, golf, housing, apartments, and office complexes. They have done a great job, particularly Wilmington has done an amazing job at doing that. Sussex County has multiple places that it's like opening businesses and building apartments. Procter & Gamble in Smyrna, 4,000 jobs. And we currently, Delaware Online has us listed, the projects that we have had over the last year. As of 24 May 22, we have the Boot Barn. So we need to encourage business quickly and give them a reason to stay here.
Thank you, Ms. Welch. Mayor Christensen.
4,000 jobs for Procter & Gamble in, did you say Smyrna and Middletown? 4,000 jobs. I don't know where they went. Well, you know, the beach has something that we don't have. Tons of sand. But they also have something else we don't have. Tons of traffic. Uncontrolled traffic. Growth that is not kept up with their roads and infrastructure. Do we really want to be Rehoboth? Do we really want to be Lewis? No. Do we want to be Dover that grows in an orderly manner, in a way that we can still be the community that we have been, while welcoming new jobs, new residents, and new opportunities? I say we want to be Dover that's going to grow in a neat and orderly manner. And if not, let's just throw it all to the wind and be Rehoboth, be Lewis, be Fenwick, be Bethany, because that's not what we want to be. And I'm still curious about where these 4,000 jobs are, and tomorrow I'll hunt them up.
Thank you, Mayor Christensen. Rebuttal, Ms. Welch.
So, no, I don't want to be Rehoboth. You don't want to model yourself after anyone else. But I wouldn't mind looking like Burlington, Vermont, because I lived right across the lake from Burlington, Vermont, and they have exactly the population we do. They have basically they're the same footprint as we are in terms of square footage, and they've done an amazing job. There is a blueprint out there to grow responsibly, to grow sustainably, to use green energy, still provide jobs, and not look like Rehoboth. It's okay. Rehoboth can be Rehoboth, Lewis can be Lewis, and Dover's Dover. We have an amazing history here, and we don't want to lose it. And every building I ever restored, I restored with that history in mind. And I kept it looking exactly like it should have looked when it was built. So I'm very aware of that. But Burlington, Vermont has a great blueprint, as do some other cities. And there's no reason at looking outside of our borders to see how other people do it to make it successful. Why recreate the wheel if somebody's already done it? I want to know how they did it, and that's how we're going to do it. And we're going to use Mosaic to get there. That master plan is amazing.
Thank you, Ms. Welch. The next questions have to do really with your philosophical approach to governing the city of Dover. See what you think about it. What are the most important challenges facing city government to improve the quality of life for Dover citizens, and how do you prepare to address them? Another question, how do you intend to stay passionate and responsive to the issues discussed tonight and emerging issues over the next 4 years? And finally, what is the first thing you will do if elected? Mayor Christensen.
Well, I think it's no secret to anybody in this room what my passion is. 24/7, 365 days a year, it has been for all the time that I've lived in the city of Dover, in and around the city of Dover. My passion is to see our city grow. My passion is to see our legacy continue to grow. And the history that we all cherish so much to move on into the future. And what's the first thing I'm going to do when I get reelected and go back to my office? To continue to do what I have done for the last 40 or 50 years as a citizen of Dover. To hold a passion in my heart for the city and to continue to work to make it a better place for everyone to live, work, and play.
Thank you, Mayor Christensen. Ms. Welch.
Well, the mayor has a lot of tools at their disposal. They're, obviously, I'm sorry, before I start, can you reread the question? I just want to make sure I'm answering the proper question.
I'm sorry.
Can you reread the question, please?
Oh, sure. What are the most important challenges facing city government to improve? No, that's the wrong question. How do you intend to stay passionate and responsive to the issues discussed tonight and emerging issues over the next 4 years?
So, and what's the first thing I'm going to do if I get elected? That was the second part.
What are the important challenges?
So the first part was...
Oh, what is the first thing that you're going to do if elected?
Okay, well, I'm going to answer that one first. And then I'll talk about the second thing I'm going to do if I'm really... I'm going to have a martini, okay? So that's the first thing I'm going to do. But the mayor has tools at their disposal, and I plan on using every single one of them. There have been some things that have gone through city council who, leadership has said, not my fault, not my fault. Well, the mayor has veto power. You veto it until they get it right. And you insist on good communication via website, social media, newspaper, whatever, good communication. And the livability in Dover right now is not very good. And so that is going to be my number one address. And livability can come, crime, parking, economics, that all comes under livability. So the livability is what I'm going to attack, and I'm going to call those people from Mosaic from my office. Yeah.
Thank you, Ms. Welch. And finally, we are now up to rebuttal, Mayor Christensen.
One of the successes of being mayor of the city of Dover is collaboration, and I've talked about it all night. But one of the collaborations that is most important, because these are the folks that legislate and finance the operations of the city on a daily basis, is working with council. They hold the purse strings. And I would point out that on a number of times, much to the council president's displeasure, I have vetoed and will continue to veto those things that are not in the best interest of you, the citizens, or the city. I have done it, and I will continue to do it. But remember, it's a collaboration of mayor and council. They have the money, I don't. So I do what I have to do without the money and then go beg for it.
Thank you, Mayor Christensen. Finally, we are on question number 21. So you have passed your 20 questions. So here, question 21 is, what motivated you to seek or continue in this office, and what are your qualifications? And we'll start out with Ms. Welch.
I decided to seek out mayor because as a business owner who's been owning several businesses downtown for 22 years, and I've owned property, I've lived downtown, I wasn't seeing a whole lot of forward movement. There'd be little flurries of movement, but really downtown and parts of Dover look exactly like they did 22 years ago, and we cannot sustain that. We cannot. And so I decided, seeing that Mr. Christensen was going to be running again unopposed, which is not democracy. That's, by very definition, it's not democracy. So I decided to run. So there's a choice, and you guys can decide. And that's why I decided to run. And hope is not a strategy. Let me just point that out. I was in the military for 21 years. Hope is not a strategy. I'm not going to hope anything is going to work. I'm going to make sure it works. And I'm going to work very, very closely with council. And have you met me? I'm very, very charming. Very, very charming.
Thank you, Ms. Welch. Mayor Christensen.
Well, to answer the question quite succinctly, I bring a lot of qualification in being a public servant. to this job. I have the fire, the passion, and the concern, and the compassion for all my citizens and what is in your best interest. I have worked tirelessly during my career as a member of council, as council president, as a volunteer in the community, both in the fire department and in other entities. And I still have the fire, compassion to do the job that needs to be done on a daily basis. Not on a whim, not because I thought it was the right thing to do, not because somebody was unopposed, but because I believe in the job that I do every day for each and every citizen of the city of Dover. And lastly, but not least, I believe in Dover, and I hope you believe in Dover too.
Thank you, Mayor Christensen. We will now close the formal part of tonight's program. I would like to thank both the audience and the candidates for your enthusiastic participation this evening. Just a reminder that you can access the video of this debate online on the League of Women Voters Kent County website by Friday, April 14th at kcdelwv.net and on the League's YouTube channel. There should be campaign literature available at the rear of the auditorium, but most importantly, please remember to vote on Tuesday, April 18th. Thank you. Good night.
I don't know why they